Ms. Little, I believe that technically is quorum. Is that correct? I'm going to call the regular meeting of Township Council for the purpose of the public hearing to order. And of course, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and in particular, acknowledge our valued relationships with the Katzie, Kwantlen, Matsqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. The preamble, please.
A public hearing is a statutory requirement under Section 464 of the Local Government Act and must be held before third reading of a community plan, land use contract amendment bylaw, heritage designation bylaw, or heritage revitalization agreement bylaw. During a public hearing, Council acts in a quasi-judicial role for the purpose of allowing persons who believe their interest in property is affected by a bylaw, permit, or other matter to make representations to Council, either orally, by written submission, or to add comments to or elaborate upon correspondence that may have already been presented to Council concerning the bylaws. It is important to note that Council is not able to receive any additional information on the bylaws following the public hearing as dictated by case law. The hearing procedure involves an explanation from the Community Development Division on the purpose of the proposed bylaws and to hear from individuals regarding the bylaws. In order to ensure that all interested parties have a reasonable opportunity to be heard, speakers are requested to keep representations as brief and succinct as possible and no longer than 5 minutes in duration, excluding the time required for questions from Council. Speakers will be asked to state their name, neighborhood, and city for the record. And if referring to prepared remarks, to submit copies of these to the Township Clerk. Decorum must be always maintained. This includes refraining from applause, booing, or heckling. To assist with large numbers of speakers, individuals must advise the Township Clerk and sign the speakers list prior to the commencement of the public hearing. The names on the speakers list will be read out during the hearing. Individuals who have already addressed Council and wish to add further submissions will wait until the people that have not yet addressed Council have had an opportunity to speak. All submissions and speaker lists are considered part of the public record. Council members should not express their views nor debate the bylaws. However, they may question speakers to clarify particular points in their submissions. Council may consider third reading or third reading and final adoption at this meeting or at its next regular meeting. Thank you.
So again, a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Call the question on A1. That carries unanimously. Mr. Cooner, item B1.
Thank you, Your Worship. B1 is Williams Neighborhood Plan Update. That is bylaw number 5799, which amends the Langley Official Community Plan by providing a revised neighborhood plan for the Williams area. It amends the Willoughby Community Plan by incorporating the proposed William Neighborhood Plan and related amendments into the Willoughby Community Plan, and proposes to provide more residential density, mixed-use development, and urban park areas. Provides a land use designation map and development permit provisions. The required notifications for bylaw 5799 were newspaper advertisements, which ran in the July 10th edition of the Langley Advance Times and the July 11th edition of Elder Grove Star, meeting the requirements under the Local Government Act. 924 public hearing notices in the form of address-specific postcards were sent out to registered owners or occupants in the planning area and to those within 100 meters of the plan on July 4th, meeting the requirements of the Local Government Act as well. We have received currently 8 written submissions, and we have 1 registered speakers on the speakers list, which is Mike Kez.
Yep, great. So Mike Kiez, please come forward. 3 minutes away. Okay, is there any other speakers, any other submissions from the public? Please come forward. Yeah. Okay, well, it's either way. Come forward and state your name and neighborhood for the record, and you can go ahead. Great, go ahead.
Your Worship, members of council, my name is Randy Dick. Address is 1551 Johnson Street, Vancouver, BC. I've been retained by Lorvell Developments Limited as their project director for approximately 72 acres of land north of 80th Avenue that is designated as the employment lands in the Williams Neighborhood Plan. My training and background is in urban land economics, and I've been a development consulting working in BC for the last 20 years. I'll be speaking on the planning and economic issues in the Williams Neighborhood Plan associated with the policy changes that are referenced in the June 10, 2024 staff report that is in this public hearings package. Part of that package is a CAC policy amendment that includes the Williams Neighborhood Plan area. Staff have confirmed to us on July 2nd this year that the CAC policy in the package has not yet been adopted, but rather will be considered for adoption by Council at the July 15 Council meeting as part of the Williams Neighborhood Plan. I will be providing my complete written comments in writing to your public hearing clerk at the conclusion of my remarks. And given the time constraints, my oral comments only highlight some of what I have to say. Given the importance of this initiative, I ask that you take care to review the complete written submission before you make any decisions regarding the bylaw and the policies that you've brought forward for input today. So the Williams employment lands are critical because they have the potential to create thousands of jobs for township residents and create a bigger and more diversified tax base to the benefit of the township's economy. The Langley OCP states, providing employment in the community is important because it offers opportunities for residents to work close to where they live, thereby reducing the time, cost, and environmental impacts of commuting, and also providing a diversified assessment base for property taxes. The OCP also sets out an aspirational goal to provide a 1-to-1 ratio between the number of jobs in the township relative to the number of residents in the labor force. For Langley to realize these important economic benefits, it's critical that the township ensure that it is facilitating the development of this economic driver and not including policies that will frustrate the plan's ability to achieve. 3 of the changes in the current iteration of the neighborhood plan that will inevitably make the development of the employment lands uneconomical for any developer are the inclusion of a massive CAC under which between $32 and $39 million would be added to the cost of developing the lands, the addition of a public works yard to be located within the employment lands, and a new arterial road provision. CACs are rarely charged on non-residential projects or rental housing across Metro Vancouver. This is for 2 fundamental reasons. Firstly, the property taxes levied on commercial and industrial are typically much higher per $1,000 of asset value than for residential. It is therefore very much in the township's interest to grow its commercial and industrial tax base so that the residential base is not subject to dramatic tax increases over time. Secondly, non-residential projects are much less able to carry upfront costs, such as large CACs. For residential strata projects, revenues are front-loaded at the completion of the project through a combination of pre-sales and subsequent sales in the immediate period after occupancy. For leasehold projects, by contrast, revenues are not front-loaded, rather they accrue gradually over time. While such projects perform adequately on a cash flow basis over time, they have very poor returns if evaluated on a build and sell basis. Adding a substantial upfront cost will often deter the project, eliminating the ongoing property tax and employment benefits that could be achieved. The planning and economic concern with locating a public works yard within the employment lands is 1, the permanent reduction in the number of jobs and a reduction in the amount of property tax revenue that would result from reducing the size of the employment land uses. There's also a negative impact that this kind of use would have on the campus feel that the neighborhood plan envisions and on the marketability of the employment lands. The particulars of the arterial road provision that you've added it at section 11.1 of the plan is laid out in our written submission. As explained there, the problem is that the arterial road policy is that in effect it makes every owner a hostage of the other owner when they try to proceed. That is a recipe for gridlock, not for economic advancement. In conclusion, the goals and objectives of the Williams Plan can only be achieved if the plan respects the development, economics, and related practical considerations for each of the councillors. If you want to facilitate more jobs, a larger tax base, and a diverse township economy, we ask that you defer any vote on adopting this plan and carefully consider all of the submissions made by myself and the other written submission being submitted by the owner of the employment lands. For the reasons set out in these submissions, we would ask that you reverse the CAC policy, remove the civic institutional designation, and exclude the employment lands from the arterial road policy. These provisions, as they are, will make the realization of the economic benefits impossible, and the realistic outcome will be that these employment lands will lie vacant to the detriment of the township taxpayers.
I have a question from Council. Councilor Richter?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Dick. The existing plan, when it was passed, it had the opportunity to have the film studio there, which I was really excited about because I thought it would be a wonderful employment opportunity in the township. Now, this proposed plan, does it prohibit or eliminate the opportunity for that film campus to be there?
I don't believe it prohibits it.
Yeah, but it's going to make it difficult.
Well, all the delays have made it difficult.
Yeah. Is it conceivable that it can still proceed under the proposed plan?
To be honest,
Will proceed?
I don't know the answer to that from a financial point of view. I believe the plan itself would not prohibit it
Yeah.
as it stands.
Okay. And you mentioned the CACs, like for the property up there where the film studio is going to be, what are the CACs on that
Yeah,
now?
so we allowed it, but the CACs are not a subject of the public hearing. Only the bylaws are a subject of the public hearing. Mr. Cooner can clarify that the CAC policy is adopted by resolution. It is not a subject of the public hearing.
That is correct, Your Worship. The bylaw before you is the proposed bylaw in relation to the Williams Neighborhood Plan. The policies are a separate item that would be adopted by council. It's a council policy.
Okay. Well, I would think CACs are a factor in this.
They're not a subject of the public hearing.
Okay, so the institutional lands that are being proposed in this this revised plan here, this 5799, would go where?
Right now, it's a floating symbol, so I believe it's intended that it would go somewhere on the employment lands, but there are no parameters given about what the requirements would be, how big it would be, how it would be paid for. Those types of things aren't made clear.
Okay, so on this this proposed plan, the school site's been identified already, but the other institutional, which would be a work yard, or is not?
Right now, it's a floating symbol.
It's a floating symbol. Okay, would it be helpful if it was nailed down to a particular area?
Well, it would be helpful to know the parameters. Our preference would be that it not be in the employment lands because, I mean, it's an expensive place for it to be when you consider the cost of the land and also the lost higher tax revenue that you get from commercial industrial. And I mean, we're trying to create something special there, a sort of a campus feel that how we describe it in the neighborhood plan, and having a works yard in the middle there somewhere kind of ruins that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, now you also mentioned that exclude arterial roads. What would be the cost to your part of the plan of those arterial roads?
It's not clear exactly how that would work for the arterial road policy. We haven't got any concrete answer on that. But I guess what I'm asking is, with our lands, we've already created the subdivision plan that would dedicate all of the necessary roads for the entire employment area as part of the approval process that we were going through. So we would love to just get going again and register that and have our part done and just not be held up by negotiations elsewhere in the neighborhood. Because like I said in my presentation, there's a lot of jobs and there's a lot of tax revenue that could be coming to the township. So why would you delay that unnecessarily? So.
Okay, and I had one more question, but it slipped my mind. Maybe it'll come back to me, so I'll let someone else have a chance to ask you a question. Thanks.
Councillor Kunst?
So maybe it's a process question that I'm going to ask through you to just to our staff. On the clerk's note here, council may consider third and final, but then it also said council adopt the community amenity policy number as amended.
This is to clarify submissions from the submission. It's not to clarify the process. We can do that after. This is to
But
clarify.
one of my questions was actually about the viability of the plan, which I think includes the CACs, but I guess
The bylaws do not include the CAC program. So,
So
Mr. Can maybe clarify again, the subject of the public hearing is the bylaw before us, and we're here to ask questions to clarify the submission, and that's the box that we're in legally.
That is correct, Your Worship. The community amenity contribution policy is a township-wide policy. The policy is proposed to be amended and for council to consider the exact bylaw that's been before council today and subject to this public hearing is bylaw number 5799, which is the proposed Williams Neighborhood Plan and the plan amendments in relation to that.
And questions from council are clarifications on the submission.
Yeah. So those questions then we can ask after it gets possible third reading?
Those would be questions for staff when the policy is on the floor or during the portion of in any meeting when the bylaw is on the floor for third and final reading. Councillor Martins?
Thank you. You mentioned the uncertainty related to the floating symbol for the civic institutional use. You mentioned you were working on behalf of the proponent. Have you had conversations with staff? Have they provided you any context or information or any clarity on this matter?
No, we've asked, but I don't think the clarity exists yet. It sounds like there's some internal process that will have to happen before those parameters would be set. So we have no information at this point.
Okay, and in your years of experience, have you ever seen a floating symbol for a civic institutional use before?
No, I haven't, but.
Okay, yeah, thank you, because you've been at it longer than I have, so that's why I thought I'd ask you that question. Thank you very much.
Councillor Richter?
Yeah, my question came popping back in, thank you. I know that in a prior iteration of this bylaw, or the one right before it, a very strong concern was expressed that the proponent had not been properly consulted or involved with the plan that was put in place. Do you feel that you've been properly consulted this time around?
Well, if I'm going to speak honestly, no, I don't think so. I mean, there were some meetings, but all of them were at my request. No one ever asked for our input, other than there was the public information meeting, which we did attend. So, but in my experience over the years, normally we call them the stakeholder or landowners would have the ability to have meetings with staff and maybe even council and talk about what's in the plan, what's feasible to try to, I always want a situation where we're working with the municipality together to create something, and that's when the really good stuff happens, and not the us versus them approach. So I'm hoping that this can head in that direction, because I think it would be good for us and the township to be working really cooperative together.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I have a clarification. If you've been, this plan has been iterations, I think 2 public hearings, 2 open houses. I believe, as you just said, you've met with staff multiple times. I believe you've met with more than a majority of council. You have a written submission, which I believe we'll seriously consider. What additional consultation would you expect?
Well, like I say, in my experience as a stakeholder or as representing a large stakeholder in the plan, normally there would be a lot more back and forth, not just waiting for me to ask for a meeting and then go there and, hold the meeting, but not a lot of information coming out of those meetings.
But you have met with staff multiple times. You've been to both. You've been to open houses, and you're making submissions here at, I believe, multiple public hearings.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's I'm not denying that there were meetings that I requested and that were held. So I'm not denying that.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah.
Seeing no other questions, I appreciate your submission. Is Mike Keys here? Please come forward. Great. Go ahead.
Mayor, councilors, thanks for your patience with me. My name is Mike Keys. I'm here today on behalf of the Langley Disc Golf Club, or the LDGC. I'm here to express our concern regarding recent changes made to Dale Ball Passive Park as part of the Rin Community Development Project. Disc golf is an extremely popular sport in the township as it provides free, easily accessible.
So if I could just, this is the Williams Neighborhood Plan, but what we'll do is we'll take your submission to the Williams Neighborhood Plan, expressing concerns about what you're about to submit about. But
Okay.
this is, go ahead. Yeah, go
Good
ahead.
to know. Thank you very much.
Go ahead. I'm actually very much want to get this submission. So
Cool. Sounds good. Thank you.
Unique way to go about it, but go ahead. Yeah.
I'm pretty new to this stuff, so I appreciate your patience.
Yeah, go ahead.
Disc golf is an extremely popular sport in the township as it provides free, easily accessible recreation to all residents of the township. We are requesting your collaboration to ensure our community has the facilities to properly facilitate the growing player base in the township. In case you're unfamiliar with the history of disc golf in the township, allow me to give a brief summary. The course at Dale Ball Passive Park was installed in 2004. Disc golf quickly became a go-to activity for families and individuals from all socioeconomical backgrounds in the township due to the sport's ease and accessibility. The course is free to play, the discs are cheap to purchase, and you don't need to be particularly good at the sport to have fun. Passive Park was, of course, unique in the Lower Mainland as it was much higher quality than anything else around. This actually helped spawn some of the local players in the township to become actual professional disc golfers that toured the world and made some money. Some even went on to become world champions in the disc golf world. So as the numbers of players and families steadily rose in the township until 2019 when the new Raptors Knoll course was opened on the Jackman wetlands. Disc golf community then exploded exponentially during the pandemic as people sought out free, safe outdoor activities. This surge in popularity was further celebrated when Raptors was voted the 13th best course in the world in 2022. Since then, the growth of the sport has continued. Between Passive and Raptors, there are currently well over 200,000 rounds of disc golf played yearly by the residents of the township, with other groups of people coming from not all over the Lower Mainland, not only over Canada, but even over the world. With the combination of Passive and Raptors, the township of Langley was set up to be one of the best disc golfing communities in the world. That is, when we had the ability to use both of the courses at their full capacity. Which brings us to why I'm here today, as the recent construction at Passive Park has impeded the way the course is played. This is causing some unneeded safety hazards with both the disc golfers and non-disc golfers who use the park. We understand the township is planning for the park's future and increased use due to the new Rin Community Plan. However, it will be disc golfers who will remain the most frequent user group, as we are the ones who have built the course and maintained the park as a whole for the last 20 years. With thousands of rounds of played every month, it's vital to have a proper place for these people to continue to play disc golf. While we appreciate the township's platitudes to work with us during this project, we feel an overall lack of engagement with the disc golf community and a complete disregard for our concerns about safety. It's clear that due to the changes, the course will no longer be suitable for the variety of skill levels that call this course home, but we believe there is still potential to salvage what remains and redesign the course for beginners and families to use for generations to come. Some of our specific concerns are the path construction. The new path was designed to be paved. However, the decision was made to not pave it, which I greatly appreciate, but the same amount of materials was kept in the path despite remaining unpaved. This choice has left excessive amounts of unneeded gravel that sits on top of a plastic poly base. This combination has already started to erode in some areas on the path. As well, the choice of the path routes. There are multiple paths that were placed in ways that either ruin an existing hole or make it dangerous to play when people are there walking, especially the chosen path near hole 13. The current route goes up a very steep section that we think presents a potential safety hazard due to erosion and accessibility challenges for users of the park with limited mobility. As well, there have been talks of putting a viewing deck overlooking a dirt mud field. We strongly oppose the construction of the viewing deck in this area as it serves as a vital area for multiple tee pads and baskets. We are also concerned with additional water that will be coming into the park. The park was chosen to be the storm drainage solution for part of the Rin community. While we can only guess what the actual amount of extra water per year will be, unless some action is done to help protect some of the holes, we will lose the ability to play the course at all in heavy rain years. Moving forward, we're committed to working with the township to ensure the park meets the needs of all user groups. To accomplish that, we're asking for 5 things. We're asking that the club be able to work with the township arborist to redesign the course in a way to help alleviate pedestrian traffic problems. Number 2, we're asking to be able to fortify some of the areas of the course against the ingress of the extra storm water. Number 3, we're asking the township to reroute the path by hole 13 to make it safer and more accessible to the general public, and to remove an unnecessary path on hole 1 that was built to facilitate the useless lookout point. And number 5, due to the forecasted new pedestrian use from the Rin community and the continued exponential growth of disc golf membership in the township, we are officially requesting a new championship level disc golf course in the township so that we can continue to foster the growth of disc golf for all skill levels in the community. In conclusion, we're committed to working alongside the township to ensure Dale Ball Passive Park remains a vibrant space for all users. By collaborating on solutions like the path rerouting and responsible course redesign, we can address safety concerns and accommodate the growing disc golf community. We believe that by investing in disc golf, you are investing in the health, well-being, and a strong sense of community in the township. Thank you for your consideration.
A couple of questions, and we saved you coming back for a delegation in September.
Thank you.
But this was about the Williams Neighborhood Plan, but I would also suggest there's 2 questions from council. I would suggest that you follow up with an email to all members of council with what you just read. And I suspect almost all of us will follow up with you. Okay, great. So Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, when I came and walked around the course with you guys, could you expand a little bit, a little more on the safety concerns you have, especially when it dealing with the interaction of the paths and the hole?
Yeah, so the paths go like right down the fairways of the hole. That was put at a certain level that they determined the appropriate flood level for the course. We gave them a couple alternatives to appease what they wanted for the elevation change and to keep our course intact, and they decided to just keep going right down the middle of it.
So, Council, I'd like to get back on track with the Williams Neighborhood Plan. We can certainly follow up by email or phone calls.
Sure.
I'd like to get back on track with the Williams Neighborhood Plan. Councillor Richter, do you have any? Can this wait? Because this is not about the Williams Neighborhood Plan.
I know, and that's the question that I had, and thank you for coming, Mr. Keys. But I was just wondering, who told you to come tonight? Because it's not the Rin plan, it's the Smith plan.
Someone just told me to show up and come here. So when I called in, because I'd submitted a request online, and then it was a couple weeks ago, and I didn't hear from anybody, so I just called in and like, oh yeah, just show up and you can talk. So
okay,
that was why I came here.
So I now have a procedural point I wanted to ask about. As we've deviated off the approved agenda to hear this delegation, does this create a problem with this public hearing?
So thank you for your submission, and we'll deal with Councillor Richter's question, but thank you very much for your submission, and I suggest you follow up with an email to all of council.
Can do. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Cooner, can you specify that any submission can be made and it's the discretion of the chair to accept it?
That is correct. His submissions will be noted, even though they may not be relevant. The submissions will be taken.
And it's just don't want to be rude, Councillor Richter.
I'm not being rude, Mr. Mayor. We have procedures that we have to follow, which is the agenda, and accepting submissions on something that's not on the agenda and which in fact has already had final reading, I believe, the Rin plan.
I think Mr. Cooner has answered the question, but do you want to answer it again, Mr. Cooner?
No, okay, Mr. Mayor, please.
Can we just get back to the agenda, please?
Disrespect. No, I'm worried that there's a legal issue now because this public hearing agenda has gone off topic.
Mr. Cooner?
Is that a procedural problem?
I think it's been answered, but Mr. Cooner, go ahead.
The chair has a discretion to accept the submission. Submission was made. Submission, even though not relevant, will be noted on the minutes of the public hearing.
Is there any other submissions from the public? Can we please kick back to Williams? Thank you very much, Councilor Richter. Can any other submissions from the public on item B1? For a second time, are there any other submissions from the public on item B1? And then for a third and final time, are there any other submissions from the public on item B1? So that'll close the public hearing on the Williams Neighborhood Plan Update, item B1. Does any member of council wish to move consideration of third and final reading? Not seeing that, I'll call for termination. Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. I'd like to get going right away, reconvene the midday agenda. Ms. Little, do we just carry on? Is that correct? Just call it back to order?
That's correct. We're just reconvening as if you've just taken a break. Yep.
Call it back to order. Item Q1, I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rint. I think it's important for council in the whereases outlined quite a bit of detail there of the challenge, the budgetary challenge that's being faced, and then to get a report leading up to in Q3. So I think there'll be some tough decisions to be made, and I think it'd be helpful to get some direction to management on how this is going to be absorbed into the budget. And because I think that we're obviously going to have to find a way to pay for these increases. I don't think anyone's debating that they're worthy and that they're required, and they are what they are, but they're an extraordinary item that we're seeing now last year and heading into this year. I think it's appropriate to raise it for council's consideration in a separate report. Councilor Richter.
Okay. I take very strong exception to this particular motion, and I take strong exception to it because it's purely political. It's essentially setting up the case to blame all future tax increases on police costs, which is not the case. As we heard earlier this afternoon, there's a lot of spending going on, not to mention borrowing in this township, which is actually driving the costs in this township. It's not the police budget. And so I'm not supporting this. It's just grandstanding, and I think it's entirely inappropriate and off topic. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. I think the issue here is that the RCMP contract is one of the only ones that we have for a significant portion of our operating budget. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cooner, that those costs and changes to that service are organized by the federal government. So they are increasing the budgetary requests to the township, and the options are to pay it or to cut members. Those are to cut service levels, Mr. Cooner. So I think no one's looking at doing that, but in order to take these costs as required by Ottawa, it's no fault of anyone actually policing. It's just a budgetary challenge that's extraordinary, one of the only ones that we don't control. Mr. Cooner?
Yes, Your Worship, you've characterized it correctly. The fact that this is the model that we have before us is with the RCMP, it's a federal policing model that we download the cost as a municipality. It's different than municipal police force where the budgets are approved and there is projections and anticipated cost that can be predicted. The control and jurisdiction of dealing with the RCMP is a bit unique and does not allow us usually sometimes to predict the accurate anticipated cost that finance can project in the near future.
Yeah, it's a unique one, and one that was brought to my attention very high level, and what to do about this. And I think it's appropriate to get a report to council and have the discussion at the council table. And if you don't want that, that's fine. I think I'm trying to be inclusive, trying to get ahead of it, trying to involve council in this process in terms of if we're just going to vote against the budget, and not all of us have that luxury. And so we have to make decisions, we have to govern. And so I think some tough decisions are going to have to be made. The spending is in the capital budget. I don't know why I keep reiterating myself all the time to keep explaining the same things over and over again. The spending is in the capital budget that you're referring to. The borrowing is for the capital budget. We're not allowed to borrow for operating. And the operating budget is a significant challenge where we're growing as a community. Service level demands are increasing. And we're, I think, being very responsive, not wanting to simply raise property taxes like we see in Vancouver and other municipalities like Langley City that are raising property taxes 10% every year. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think over the years and over the terms for operating, our biggest portion of, one of the biggest portions of our operating budget has always been, salaries regarding police, fire, and our major services. I mean, that's always been the case. It's never deviated. So as the years go by and those particular operating end up being higher and higher because of costs and itemized by yourself and others, we're challenged by that because we don't have the necessary other things like casinos and other generating monies to help us out with these challenges. So it's always been the case. Police and fire and other protection, it's always been the biggest part of our budget. And important as well, but it's always been that case. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Martins?
Thank you. So I guess I'm a little confused by the timing of this when we are working our way through de-integration with another municipality. I would think that the outcome of that could impact what we're looking at spending moving forward for these things, because if it's based on the number of members, if I'm understanding correctly, I don't understand the timing of this. Are we getting a report back as if we're carrying on having a joint detachment with Langley City, or will that be broken out in this report?
Mr. Cooner, I'm not sure why this Township of Langley staff would contemplate a joint detachment when direction's been very clear. I'm not really following that, but go ahead.
Sorry, if I may, to clarify, I'm assuming staff are not aware of the precise date and time that would fully happen. At least I'm certainly not. So again, I'm just wondering how they can provide that information responsibly.
Which information?
These numbers, whether it's based on together or apart, and at what point the apart happens, or is there already a set date for de-integration?
Yeah, you're conflating, I think, the integration process, which is underway, which is currently open-ended, with contract increases that are going to be appearing in the 2025 budget process regardless. Ms. Ruff, maybe Ms. Ruff can clarify the need for this?
This has arisen, I believe, because we got information on the next year's budget, and so increases we'll need to bring into next year's 2025 operating budget for RCMP. It does not contemplate the de-integration, as that is not contemplated in the information from the RCMP.
Okay, and when I'm looking at this, it's actually not just talking about next year's budget, it's talking about 2025 to 2029. So is there no intention of de-integration prior to 2029? Is that what I'm understanding?
I think that's just the technical, because that's what the budget bylaw is called.
Technical, sorry.
Ms. Ruff, could you explain what the budget bylaw is called?
Our budget bylaw is a 5-year financial plan, so it'll be from 2025 to 2029, and so we will extrapolate any changes we project.
With the best information that you have at the time?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then when I'm hearing tough decisions, is it specifically with regards to policing? Is that what that reference is to, or is it in general looking at our budget overall?
I believe there'll be some tough decisions to pay for a number of things. I think some decisions will have to get made. If a number of priorities were considered by council in previous financial plans at the beginning of the term, some of those may not be achievable with tax increases that we want to deliver to the community, and some decisions will have to be made, yeah.
Okay, because I just know that earlier in the meeting today, we've been pre-approving stuff for the next year's budget. So on one hand, we seem able to pre-approve when we're not actually got it all in front of us to determine where we need to sharpen our pencils, so to speak.
I'll say it again, there's a difference between the capital budget and the operating budget. All the pre-approvals you're referring to were very minor in nature for the Langley Arts Council, or almost all of them here today were for the capital budget.
Okay, all of them were for the capital budget.
Except for Langley Arts Council, if I recall.
Yeah, okay. All right, and
I don't know if we need to get a memo to council, because this keeps coming up. Mr. Cooner, maybe we can just put a memo together explaining the difference between the capital budget and the operating budget. Can you take that under advisement, get council a memo to explain the difference between the operating budget and the capital budget at a very high level, please?
We'll take that under advisement.
This question keeps coming up again and again. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a question of what the difference is. I'm sorry, I can't keep every single item that we go through in check as to where it's coming from, and sometimes I'm not going to remember that correctly. There's an awful lot of information. My agenda package was 1,000 pages long. So yeah, I'm going to miss stuff.
Yeah, I don't think
so
I don't think a
just would like
pre-approval.
to finish
sorry, I'm
my
going to answer your
question if
question.
I
I don't think a pre-approval in the capital budget is confusing. So if we're going to continue to make sort of statements that somehow, these decisions are getting made, that things aren't being planned. If there's a pre-approval occurring, it's occurring within the budget envelopes available in the 2024 budget with funding available in the capital projects reserve or the DCC accounts. And I think, again, bringing it up and again and conflating the two provides a significant disservice to the public. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not conflating. As I said earlier in this meeting, before we recessed, I'm asking questions so that I can understand, so I can make the best decisions. I'm not politicking, and I'm not inferring anything into this other than what some people at this table might think. I'm not misleading the public. I'm trying to serve as a councillor here at the table, an elected official to the best of my ability.
Can you speak to the motion, Councillor
But
Martins?
you also made those comments, and it's only fair that I respond to them. So with regards to the motion, what I would like to say is when we're targeting the RCMP increases, which I understand there are, and they are significant, we need to remember, and we got to put it into check, that emergency services are an unfortunate insurance that we need to provide to our community. And if we're going to start cutting costs when it comes to police, certainly not fire, but it seems police is targeted, please remember that it's there for when you need it, and hopefully you don't. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, well, I certainly appreciate that. I don't know how much clearer I could have been speaking to the motion that no one's contemplating any reductions. This is to bring it to council's attention to make tough decisions. I don't know why again and again you insist on using militaristic language in regards to a budget process. Councillor, I find it offensive. Councillor Kunst, go ahead.
Can we use RCMP reserves for operating budget?
Ms. Ruff?
Reserves are meant for capital.
Okay.
Councillor Bailey?
Comes to emergency services, I think it's pretty clear where I stand. And what I'm looking at here is direct staff to report to council on what the additional costs are. I don't see any cuts here. I kind of going along the same lines. I hear lots of councillors sitting here. What's the cost? What's the cost? I'd like to know what the cost of the RCMP is going to be. It's that easy. They're a very important part of public safety and of our community in general. So I just want to get a report on how much is it going to cost, because I've got to weigh it against other things too.
Councillor Richter?
Yeah, so I'm not supporting this because I just think what I think about this motion. But if it is going to go ahead and we are going to get a report back, I would like to get some comparators of the other unions' percentages of costs in the operating budget, as well as the increases that have occurred for collective agreement settlements for CUPE, fire, and police.
Yeah, no,
And at one point, the general rule of thumb was 30% of our budget went to policing, 20% of our budget went to fire. Is it still 30 and 20, or have those percentages changed? Thank you.
Yeah, so that will not be included in the report unless you make an amendment motion to have that included.
Then I will make an amendment, a motion to
Is there a
include.
seconder to that amendment motion? Seconded by Councillor Kunst. Can you clarify for the clerk what the motion is again, please?
Okay, what percentage of the total budget?
No, your amendment motion, Councillor Richter. You were looking for additional comparators.
Yeah,
So if you could
additional
please stick to the amendment
comparators.
motion, we'll come back to your question. What's your, could you just read it back for the clerk, please?
You know, you're talking like we're in an arcade and you're shooting bullets. Knock it off, please.
No, the
It's
problem.
not respectful.
I asked you to read the motion and you started talking about your question of the budget percentages. So if you could please help assist the clerk with your motion.
Okay, it's direct staff with sources of cost increases and any applicable recommendations that may be appropriate for council to consider, including the relative proportion of the budget that is spent on police and fire. And
Is that what you seconded, Councillor Kunst? Okay, so you could easily look that up in the last budget presentation provided by staff,
okay,
but
you know what, Mr. Mayor?
Good,
This,
I mean-
this is just ridiculous. You can't run a council like this. It's just so disrespectful.
you're making amendments that were in the budget presentation at the last budget meeting. But it's fine, we'll vote on it. But that was available in the last budget.
You're talking about the 2025 budget here. And I want to know in 2025, which we haven't even got yet, if the ratio between police and fire is still 30%, 20%,
But we
or
wouldn't-
has it shifted?
But we wouldn't know that until the conclusion of the 2025 budget process, though. I'm just trying to provide help to staff to,
No, you're trying to confuse staff, and you're doing a good job of it.
Just what is, I just need to know.
I don't understand it either,
What
Councillor
is,
Ferguson, yeah.
can I make through the clerk, what is it we're voting on? Is that a simple question?
There's no other speakers, so
I just need to know
Yeah.
what we're voting on.
it's an amendment to
Yeah, but I need
get
to know what the
information that's
amendment is. That's all
available.
I need. That's
It's an-
simple as that.
more information that's already out there. But go ahead, yeah.
Thank you. The amendment is to receive comparatives of other unions increase that have incurred regarding QP Fire and Police.
And when there was looking for percentages of the budget pie as well?
If the rates between police and fire are still 20%.
But that would, I probably should have ruled this out of order because that would prevent the report coming forward because that won't be known until the conclusion of the budget process.
Correct.
But we'll process it. Is that clarified, Councillor Ferguson?
Oh, no, I have now a simple question for Stan. Thank you for now I have it. Thank you, Ms. Little. Appreciate that. My question now is to the Director of Finance. If I was to come to your office tomorrow. I missed? If a director, thank you, Mrs. Little. Anyway, the Director of Finance. If I was to come to your office tomorrow and ask you to sit down with me and go over both our budget and our financial, would you be able to provide me this type of information? Any other question I have on our proceedings regarding financial services, if I may?
For the 2024 year, which
Yes.
is, yes, we have that information. For 2025, we're just starting to collect the information.
So, give me an example. So if I asked you how many police we had, how many fire we had, how much the budget was, both capital and operating, you'd be able to provide that to me?
Correct.
Thank you very much indeed.
Councillor Van Popta?
Okay, I know it's been a long day for all of us, but I'm pretty sure that if we don't have the 2025 budget done yet, how are we going to know what the percentage split is? Through your worship to staff, are we able to even do what this amendment is? Have we done the 2025 operational budget?
No, we have not.
Okay, so are you able to give us percentages on a budget that you don't have yet?
No, I cannot.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bailey?
I'm trying to figure out why we're talking about a report on the RCMP. All of a sudden now we're saying, well, what are the fire getting? I see no relevance whatsoever in diluting something, there's nothing in here about fire at all. So why the hell is anyone talking about fire? Okay, they're both emergency services and they both have lights and sirens. It's about the end of the similarity. So I gotta say, I sense a definite hostility a lot of times because whenever emergency services are brought up, it seems like someone wants to drag in fire in a negative context, and I'm getting damn tired of it.
Councillor Richter?
Yeah, well, you know what? It's part of the budget process, and we have spent an awful lot of money on fire this year at the same time as we've cut back on policing. So it seems to me that 30-20 ratio is no longer 30-20.
Can you clarify what you mean by cutting
And
back
yet
on
you've got a
policing?
motion here that is saying it's all the RCMP's fault. I don't think it's all the RCMP's fault. What data do you have to back that up?
You, Councilor Richter, you stated we've cut back on policing. I'd like to understand what you're referring to.
Well, there was a reduction to the policing budget in the number of members in 2024.
No, they were increased. Ms. Ruff, can you confirm that the number of members was increased in the 2024 budget, please?
We increased the number of members in the by 2.
So I'm not sure what you're referring to, Councilor Richter, when you say we've cut policing.
You've cut the amount you were going to put into policing.
No, I believe that was not proceeded with. So I'm not sure what you're referring to, Councilor Richter, because if you're making statements that aren't fact.
Okay, what I'm referring to is I think there's a bit of a double standard at this table, a big double standard.
Which is?
Some people can walk in and get any information they want. Other people have to make appointments, and if it's going to take more than 2 hours of staff time, then they have to get a council resolution in order to get that information.
I believe Councilor Ferguson clarified that management will meet with you and answer all of these questions, but you choose to ask them here rather than meet with staff to get that information.
I have the right to ask questions at a council meeting. That's exactly what I'm doing.
So council meetings,
everybody at council knows what I'm asking for.
the council meetings are to make decisions and asking questions that I think you could easily meet with staff. You've asked them many times, and you could go meet with staff and get this information. If you choose not to, that's
This just
fine.
reinforces the double standard at this table.
I have no idea what you're referring to, but okay, we'll carry on. Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, this is what I mean. We're sitting here talking about how much money we spent on fire. We hired 11 firefighters. Want to tell me what else we spent on firefighters in the operating budget, please? Because I don't know. We hired 11 firefighters, and the reason we had to do that is because we were so deficit that we were in violation not only of standards, but of legal requirements. Okay, I would suggest you look up 31-23, and you'll find out that this council had violated legally enforceable stuff. So hiring 11 firefighters, I'll compare that to the hiring of 5 RCMP, and you know what? You're going to be pretty close on money.
So I think this debate has, okay, well, needs to continue. Go ahead, Councillor Martins.
It does, because I do notice when we're looking at the numbers of the cost per firefighter over the cost per police officer, the numbers are broken out differently because the expenses attached to the firefighters, like the equipment and the trucks and all the rest, are a separate budget, where with policing, when you're looking at the cost per police officer, it's including the overall cost divided by number of police officers, so it's not a one-for-one comparator. So I would push back on that. But I would say, and respectfully, it's not a fight of police versus fire. I don't see it that way. I see both agencies as equally important, and as I said earlier, I'll say it again, it's an insurance. And it's a cost that people don't really want to have to make. You don't want to go and insure your car with ICBC and fork out your money every year for your renewal or your house insurance. But if you don't and something happens, we know how that goes. So it's important that we unfortunately put money into these things that we hope we never need. So I do not want to come across that I'm pitting fire versus police at all. I am 100% supportive of our fire department and recognizing the needs that need to be filled to ensure that our community is properly serviced. I just wanted to put that on the, just out in case there was some sort of suggestion that I was picking one over the other or pitting one against the other, because that was not my intention.
I think everybody needs a couple months off, or we're certainly from council meetings. I get that it's been a long session, getting a lot getting done. I've heard double standard, I've heard no information, I've heard this decision behind closed doors, and the one notice of motion I make to get a report to include you in the decision making gets ridiculed and voted against. So you can't make this up. I'm going to call the question on Q1.
Excuse me, Mayor Woodward?
Yeah.
There is an amendment.
Oh, we're calling a question on the amendment first. That's correct. Then so we'll call the question on the amendment to Q1 of a report you don't want.
Oh, wait, no, we're on her amendment.
That's correct. So I'm going to call the question again. Ms. Little, we're calling the vote on the amendment. Is that correct? No, I'm going to do it again.
that
Just
is
confused. We're calling the question on the amendment to Q1 for a report that they don't want. Yeah. The amendment is defeated. Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popte, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Martins, Councillor Ferguson opposed. Now back to the main motion. Just going to call the question on Q1. And that carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Q2, green natural barriers. It's up to you. Yeah. I'm going to move Q2. Is there a second or seconded by Councillor Bailey? Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Well, yes, this is something that came up at our seniors committee a couple of years ago. They'll be very, very happy to hear about this because they've been talking about green burials. And thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the report. I've had a resident ask me to pursue this, met with staff on it, and they're suggesting that it could be possible in Brookswood with some consideration reviews and a report to council with some considerations of the pros and cons. So with that, Councilor Martins.
Thank you. I just really quickly in the report, can you help hopefully educate some of us on what this actually is? I'd like some more
We
information.
can do that
about
right
it.
now, actually, so know what you're voting on. Aaron,
No, I'm okay. I'm okay to vote ahead without it. I'm just saying it'd be nice when I came back.
It might be helpful for those that are watching as well. Mr. Rule, could you confirm what a green burial is in the context of this report?
Through your worship, green burial has been defined kind of many ways over the decades, but basically it's agreed upon principles that there's no embalming to occur. Natural biodegradable casket or shroud is used, and there's no vault or liner and no markers placed on the lot.
Yeah, great. Call the question on Q2. That carries. Councillor Coons, Councillor Richter absent. Get them back, please. Councillor Van Popte, go ahead.
Yes. Be it resolved, actually, sorry, I have an amendment. Sorry, I gotta open up my amendment.
Do you want to move it as amended?
Yeah, I want to move it as amended. If we
Okay,
could bring
go
it
ahead.
up, please.
Go ahead.
Waiting for it to pop up. There we go.
Yeah, so there we are. So we're looking at them to move as amended version. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so be it resolved that council direct staff to report to council with potential options for an updated pedestrian-oriented design for the intersection of 88th and 208th, Walnut Grove Drive and 88th, 212th and 88th, and 208th and 87th in Walnut Grove that includes, but not necessarily limited to, the removal of slip lanes for pedestrian safety to potentially be completed concurrently with 216th corridor upgrades, if so approved by council to proceed.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this started with just reviewing the one slip lane that's at 216th and 88th, strictly because we are doing the 216th corridor as earlier in the agenda. So this was just an amendment just to make sure that we're reviewing that slip lane and that whole intersection in general. You know, over the years, we have come up with better designs for pedestrian safety. We're trying to, as a council, or at least most of us, making sure that we're making our communities as walkable and safe as possible. So this was strictly a report to council to make sure that we are meeting our safety targets and things that we want to do. However, after unfortunately reading on social media yesterday attempts to say that we are removing slip lanes, it was probably best to address all slip lanes within Walnut Grove because they are used extensively, and I think they were put in all around 25 years ago. So it's just more of a review to make sure that we are doing the best that we can do with our intersections. A lot of them have very high accident rates, and you know, nobody wants to see anybody get killed. So if we've got a better way to design our intersections, it's a good time to make that review and make those reports.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I want to speak especially to the dangers of some slip lanes. If you look at the slip lanes at Walnut Grove and 88th, the islands are tiny. If you are in a wheelchair or anything like that, you're barely able to fit just the one person on those islands. That is a major danger when it comes to slip lanes, especially when you've got the high school down on the corner there, and a lot of people trying to crowd onto a tiny one. So, a look at which slip lanes might be safe and productive and which ones are dangerous. I completely agree with having a look at them because I'll give you another one, 96 and 208, going around the fire hall. You can't see around the corner from when you're in the slip lane. You cannot see back onto 208. So I'm really glad to have a look at them and either removal or vastly improve them.
Can we add that? Sorry.
So go ahead, Councillor Bailey. Yeah.
Add it.
No, it's just, it's a different aspect. That intersection's going to get changed anyways, correct? 28 and 96? No,
it's 216th is what was contemplated earlier, right?
Okay.
So, yeah.
No, I'll leave it as it is. I'll address that another time.
Great. Councillor Martins?
Thank you. The reason for bringing this up on social media is because of the final line of this amendment to be completed concurrently with the 216th Street corridor upgrades, if so approved by council. Now, we're going ahead with the 216th Street upgrades as voted on earlier in this meeting. So, and that process had opportunity for public to weigh in, to attend an information session, to see the boards and the visioning boards and understand better exactly what the process was. So are we going to delay the whole 216th Street corridor project and go through a proper process after this report comes back from staff so that the public in Walnut Grove, I am the only one at this table that lives in that community, has the opportunity to weigh in, because I don't see the way this is written that there is going to be the opportunity for the public to come forward to any sort of an information session to give their feedback, which they did resoundingly do so yesterday on social media. So, and as a resident of Walnut Grove, I'm well aware that there's not a lot of pedestrians at the intersection at 88th and 208 because there are other ways for people to cross that street where it's not so busy and congested. The majority of the students traveling east-west from Walnut Grove Secondary, heading back towards in the direction of Port Kells, use a nice path network that we have available to them. They're not on that main street at that corner. So, and accident data does not suggest that it's a pedestrian issue. So I am supportive, and this is what I want said, because this seems to be that my words get twisted here. So I'm going to be really clear. I am all for upgrading to ensure that pedestrians are safer at these intersections. I agree with Councillor Bailey in his comments about those islands. They are very small, and there was feedback from the community. They'd like to see them made bigger. And I completely agree with that from an accessibility point of view as well. It's also much easier for a person to cross that entire intersection by having that break in the middle to actually get to the island and across a few lanes to another island. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. So like I said, the way this is written, I do not see the opportunity for public input, and this is a real, you're pushing a real button for the people in Walnut Grove. So if somebody can give me some assurance that 216th is now going to be put on hold so that we can do proper process and allow the residents to speak. I can't support this as it's worded. I'm very supportive of doing anything we can to improve the safety of pedestrians, but I'm not supportive of proceeding in this manner without public input.
Councillor Van Popta?
Yeah, so words do matter, and the words that you are missed in what you were just saying right now and missed on social media is the sentence beforehand. The 3 words prior to completed concurrently say specifically to potentially be. That is a very important key piece to this. We need to review how we're doing our intersections for the growth of the community, for the safety of the community, and to do another report. Half of this meeting today has been debating things that were supposed to be a report. to let staff do their job as professionals in their industry and bring forward that information to us. Going on to social media, asking residents what they want in terms of safe intersections is not the right way to do this. This is too important of an issue to go to social media and ask people how they want to cross the street. There are professionals that tell you that design intersections professionally, for a living, with backed up data to tell you how to cross the intersections. There are more than one way to do safe intersections that might not, and most likely will not actually include slip lanes. But when you go onto social media and you say that we are contemplating removing them without the important piece before that, which says we're actually asking for report so that we can learn, so that we can understand what is the safest way to get our pedestrians and our community around this town, it is doing a great disservice to this council, and it is disingenuous and strictly politically motivated, and using residents and social media as pawns when only giving half the information.
Councillor Richter?
Okay, I am a member of both the Walnut Grove groups, and I note that one Walnut Grove group has 10,000 plus members and the other one's got 8,000 plus members. And I was quite impressed. They both put a posting on, and within a couple of hours there were like over 100 responses. So people are passionate about this issue in Walnut Grove and deserve to be involved in it. I would assume that if the report comes back, that it could be referred at that point for public input. But there were a number of other, it seems to me that they were equally divided on it, that half of them didn't want any, and maybe even more like 2/3 didn't want the slip lanes taken out. The other half of them wanted them taken out. But there were other options that came up for discussion, and that included putting speed humps in the slip lanes and completing the Yorkson Creek path as to keep people off 88th Avenue. So they know their community. They got some great ideas. So if we're going to send this for a report, I would like to have the other options that were suggested on those two social media sites, speed humps and slip lanes, and completing the Yorkson Creek connector path as to be included along with removing the slip lanes, because they might all three be very viable. So do you want me to make a motion to include those two other options?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make that motion, that we include those two other options.
Is there a seconder to that?
consideration.
Second by Councillor Martins. Yeah, go ahead. I think any other speakers to that amendment? Councillor Brown Popta, go ahead.
Again, I will defer that I think it is important that professionals who design intersections should come up with the solutions for our intersections and not go to social media. And although I don't disagree with the Yorkson path, I think that that's a great idea. I do not think adding speed bumps to slip lanes as a suggestion from somebody who is not a professional in constructing intersections safely is something that we want to put in this report. I will leave all references to staff in their knowledge in how we address safe intersections.
Councillor Pratt?
I'm just happy we're talking about slip lanes. I didn't think we'd get here, to be honest, in this term, so I'm happy that this is an item for discussion. As most people know, it's an item close to my heart. One of the main concerns, and it's a valid concern from the public, is what will happen to traffic capacity if the slip lanes are removed. That'll be one factor for me that I'll be interested to see. Ideally, that will probably come in this report at some level of detail. That will be, for me, a part of the decision, but there is obviously plenty of proof to suggest that removing slip lanes does increase pedestrian safety. There's also the piece that part of the reason why we don't see people walking there is potentially because it's very unsafe, feels unsafe. Usually you don't build a bridge based on how many people you see swimming across the water. So for me, it's not always the best way to make that decision for myself. Is if I don't see somebody there, it doesn't necessarily mean they don't want to be there. But completely understand the concerns from the residents of Walnut Grove. about the removal. I think the challenge for me was that when we approved the new 208 phases, believe phase 1, we included slip lanes in that first phase. Now, I wasn't about to throw the baby out with the bathwater and vote against all of 208 phase 1, but it does go and show the challenge of removing these slip lanes once they're built. So I think having a conversation about them across the township will be very beneficial moving forward. So I look forward to the report coming to council from staff.
This is on the amendment, right? Yep. Councilor Martins?
Thank you, and I appreciate this amendment. I support it because contrary to what the mover said that we're leaving it to the professionals that know how to design intersections, the mover has included an option of removing slip lanes, which why are we even offering up to them suggestions if we are actually leaving it up to them to come up with the ideas? So to me, that's a double standard. But if we're going to leave removal of slip lanes in here, then I would like to see these other items included as well and explored. And hopefully that wasn't too militaristic or disingenuous. I think it's social media is actually a great way to garner information from people to see if we're on the right track and if this is something we should be talking about as council. And it has been used by people at this table extensively. So I used it once, and I think it's interesting that I'm being insulted and all sorts of stuff going on at this table. Maybe I need to use it more often.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I think you said you don't want the report. You're not gonna support the report, but you're looking to amend the report.
Yeah. So can I speak to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Sure. I'm happy to clarify for you.
But you want to amend the report, but you don't want it.
I would like to see if we're putting several options in. That's good, because to me, on one hand, we're saying we're leaving it to the professionals, but we're putting it right in this motion, removal of slip lanes. So that's not leaving it to the professionals to decide how to make this intersection safer. I support making this intersection safer. I feel we're saying one and not the other. So hey, yeah, let's throw some more ideas that we'd like them to look at too.
Councillor Kuntz?
I kind of think we should have Susie Summer. She seems to know a lot.
Let's just get this meeting over with. Councillor Pratt, do we really need...
I got a second.
Do you actually have a point? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, at the end of the day, are we going to just get public feedback on this or if that's part of the amendment? That's,
Yeah, I was going to speak to the potential process. People are way ahead of themselves on this one. So I think let's just dispose of the amendment and go back to the main motion. So I'm going to call the question on this amendment, which I certainly don't support. Yes, so we got to... So is this again? This is Q3. And that carries with Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popta opposed. So we're back to the main motion as amended. Is there any other speakers? Yeah, so it'll be a very fulsome report at this point. I'll be interested actually in the Yorkson Creek thing. Maybe it won't be so bad to get some information on that. I certainly didn't like the other portion of the amendment. So I think if you look at this carefully, what we're starting to see is a trend of I support improvements to ped safety, but I don't want to report about approving pedestrian safety. It's a report, right? And so I think it'd be interesting to see what staff say the implications are of slip lanes in general. And I think this is a good place to look at it in terms of potential options. That's correct. I think it's important to put that out. Potentially to be completed concurrently. I think there's some assumptions maybe that there's some expectation of 216th corridor upgrades. That's a very expensive project that I think is going to be a subject of a presentation in September. It's a very expensive project that I think is going to be looking for funding, competing with other priorities. So it may this council can decide, but it may be slower to be implemented based upon just available funding. So potentially completed concurrently was I think, from what I asked, was a sincere attempt to try to save some money by potentially lumping them together. And maybe we do another round of public consultation on the whole area of upgrading the two primary corridors in Walnut Grove. I must have missed the demand from members of this council demanding slip lanes at 202 and 88th, because apparently that intersection is complete disaster and failure. We should go put them in apparently, because they're going to be such a wonderful boon to Walnut Grove. I think what we're seeing here is an attempt to undermine almost any motion that comes forward. So I think we'll just carry on and we'll call the question on Q3. As amended, that's correct. That carries unanimously, so we do want the report. That's great. So we're going to move on here. Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I just, 5, I direct staff for a report. Okay, just a report. I just want to really make sure I'm clear on that one. And just see what the neighboring municipalities are doing and trying to get, this tree removal issue into some workable stuff. We've had presentations about people coming. Oh, I can't talk. I need a second.
You do. Seconded by Councillor Kunst.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
go ahead, Councillor Bailey.
Just hopefully what the other municipalities do will work, and we'll get some common sense in here.
That would be very refreshing. Councillor Kunst, go ahead.
Oh, that sounds like Polly having a feast.
I won't say anything on that. Yeah, no, I'm happy to support that because we've seen sort of a flood of people coming, and there has to be a better way to solve this. Or anyway, so I will be supporting that.
Councillor Martins.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely support this request for a report. What I would like to know is, to the reference about the different delegations that have come forward and people who have been very significantly financially impacted by the current fees, is there a moratorium at present while we await and work this one through, or are we plowing ahead with enforcement as it currently exists?
Mr. Cooner.
To your worship, Councillor Martins, we will be considering all options in a report to council. Right now, as it stands, the direction being given is that we review the fees and charges schedule 15 of the tree protection bylaw, but not actually review the tree bylaw itself. So we will definitely take into consideration the outstanding fines that have been in relation to some of the delegations that have been brought forward.
Sorry, that and probably because it is getting late in the night, just sort of a bit more clarity there on the bylaw side of things. Are they continuing to write tickets or enforcing the current bylaw while we're doing this?
So there are no tickets for tree removal. There's an assessment of a fine, a one-time, that doesn't go up. There's no more additional tickets, but I believe the staff and Mr. Cooner and I have confirmed that while council is considering changes, that no action would be taken. Is that correct, Mr. Cooner?
We will be putting the fines in abeyance in the moment until we bring forward the report to council, which may then give the options of potentially retroactively applying these fines or having a certain date that the implications of the fine are starting. So those are all the options we'll take into consideration and keep the fines that are outstanding in abeyance until the report's brought forward.
And I believe that Councillor Bailey was looking for some urgency around this in regards to that issue, which is why Q3 2024 is specified.
Yeah, okay, no, thank you, and I appreciate that, and I'm assuming the people that are receiving these fines in whatever form that might appear are also advised that that we're in kind of a gray area here, or are we, if they're lucky if they know, and if they don't, oh well?
Dear Worship, Councillor Martins, we will be notifying the individuals in relation to this direction in the report and the estimated date to come forward to council, and the potential implications on their fines in the event the report's brought forward and approved by council.
Councillor Van Popta?
Just to clarify further to that, it doesn't mean that we're not going to still monitor and enforce the current bylaws. It just means that we're not necessarily going to actually go through with fining right now until we come up with these new numbers.
Mr. Cooner?
Dear Worship, to Councillor Van Popta, that is correct. I could even, hypothetically speaking, for example, if an individual, and I'm using an arbitrary number, is fined $1,000 based on our Schedule 15 tree protection fees and charges bylaw, after review, we come to the conclusion that $500 was the appropriate amount. And therefore, we would then continue to negotiate with the individual or reassess his fine at $500. That does not mean that we are foregoing any of the outstanding tickets that have been issued.
Sorry, I'm just clarifying. So right now, from today until this report comes back, we're not going to not make sure that people are not clear cutting their lots and taking out trees illegally and without permit because they know that we're in this gray area of time. We're still going to enforce our current bylaws, just not collect the fines until we understand what the new rates are going to be.
To your worship, Councillor Van Popta, that is correct. The tree bylaw itself remains, we haven't been directed to review it. That will stand. That will still be enforceable. It's just only the fees that we're reviewing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and it's important, Mr. Cooner, to clarify that tree removal without a permit is not an ongoing violation with repeated offenses. It's a one-time ticket/fine, and then the perception there's nobody going back and issuing any additional fines. It's a one-time thing.
That is correct.
Yeah. And if somebody tomorrow chops a tree?
My understanding that they would be issued a fine, which would be obeyed until council considers this issue, but that if you were to clear permits in contravention of the bylaw, clear trees in contravention of the bylaw, same enforcement would apply until changes are made.
That's correct.
That's correct,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
That's my understanding as well. That, I'll call the question on Q5. That carries unanimously. Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, talking about Wagner Hills building permits, I think everyone recognizes the fact that I'm not an overly religious person, and this doesn't come easily. So I went and walked through this facility and had a really good talk on that. And the reason I'm putting this forward is because with the crisis that are going on right now, especially around drugs and how many people are dying and all that kind of stuff, and then you combine that with this is a facility that doesn't turn people away when they don't have money. Now, there are a lot of rehab places that charge an awful exorbitant amount of money, or they make them work like indentured servants. This one, I asked specifically, what if someone comes here, wants to get into rehab, doesn't have any money, are you going to turn them away? And I was told, no, we turn no one away. And to me, that is why I'm bringing this one forward. I am very, very familiar with rehabs. I've been involved with a number of them over the years. And if we can help one person get off drugs and become a productive person in society again, I'm all in favor. And 45 grand or 46 grand to me is well worth money spent coming from council contingency.
I think you have to move it.
Yes. Thank you for the
No, I want to move.
moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Van Popta. So that was great. Thank you for that, Councillor Kunst. Appreciate that. Councillor Van Popta, go ahead.
So I wasn't aware that Councillor Bailey was looking at this one. Found out last week, and it hit me a little bit different because I spent a significant amount of time at Wagner Hill last week because I have family there. To know that our provincial government funds free drugs to addicts as a form of compassion, but does not fund centers like Wagner Hills for people who want recovery is absolutely appalling. And although I generally believe that governments should stay in their own lane and recovery and addiction is generally covered under provincial legislation, this particular center produces incredible volunteers for this community. There is not a community event where I don't see the black t-shirts of Wagner Hill men walking around serving this community. And if we have to step in where the provincial government is failing our residents, and it is true, although that there is a Christian element to Wagner Hills, you don't have to have any particular faith to go there. You don't have to practice anything. You can be atheist, you can be Buddhist, you can be Sikh, you can be agnostic. Their only mandate is to see people get well. And they have incredible results out of this facility. And the fact that the government, the provincial government, does not subsidize it in any capacity throughout the funding of a new facility or a bigger facility to house more men within this region is absolutely abysmal. of our provincial government. And I thank Councillor Bailey and Mayor Woodwards for touring this facility last week and hearing from them the challenges. And I am more than supportive of this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson?
Well, yes, I'm going to be supporting that. So sorry to hear that, Councillor Van Popka. It's very difficult, working with people that have had challenges with abuse or substance and otherwise. When Wes Wagner came up to me a number of years ago, quite a number of years ago, he said he wanted to put a treatment plant up on a hill in Aldergrove. And I said, you must be kidding me. He said he's working with people to assemble his land and others in the area. And I too have visited, not to visit residents there, but visit to take a look and see what they do there. Our Rotary Club donates to the organization. We donate clothes and food and other things, and we've been doing that for many years. But they reciprocate. They come over and help us at our events, whether it's a Rib Fest or another event or organization, some kind of event. They support the community. That was Wes's dream, Wes Wagner. And Helmut and Kevin and a few of the others that have continued along with that have always helped out the community. And Councillor Bailey is right. They don't turn anybody away. And if you want to follow their Christian views, that would be up to you, but they don't turn you away. They try to help you. They try to get you to turn around if you can. So I think this is great. It's an opportunity, and it also opens the door for council to be involved with other types of things within the community. So thank you for bringing this particular notice of motion forward. Thank you.
Councillor Martins?
Thank you. So I'm going to just lead first a question of clarification after hearing from other speakers here. Are we looking at helping to fund accessible treatment, or is this strictly about repaying a building permit fee? Or I'm just wondering, did I miss something? Have we taken it a step further that we are also wanting to make it accessible to people?
Just to clarify, I believe Councillor Bailey is following in the footsteps of a contribution that was made to Langley Hospice some years ago by the same process of basically refunding a portion. This is approximately 50% of their building permit fee, and this is being returned, and the funding source for that being council contingency. So it would be considered a capital contribution to the expansion that it's undergoing.
Okay, but not a direct correlation to then reducing the expenses or the accessibility to treatment. This is they're two separate things here. I'm just wanting to make sure, because there was conversation about treatment, accessible treatment, and supporting the program. But I'm wondering if I can, through the chair to staff. Wagner Hills has paid, it says $45,800, which is a lot, for a building permit fees paid for building permit number 143810. Could I have some clarification on how long ago that was paid? Is that like recent months, in the last year or two, or does anybody know?
Cooner?
To your worship, Council Martins, we can get back to you on the exact date and advise council of that. I believe the $45,800 represents 50% of that building permit fee. I believe the total fee would be double that.
Okay, so this is 50% of actually the fee they were actually charged.
That is my understanding. I believe it is 50% that is being covered, offsetting the building permit fee.
Okay, thank you. Yep, I'm fully in support of this. I'm just trying to understand how far back it goes, and maybe we need to look at further consideration. If I could ask, if information can be provided to council on when that was paid and what the total cost was, just should we want any further consideration in the future. But at this point, I'm I'm definitely wanting to support this 100%. I know the importance of that facility and facilities like that throughout our region, and I really appreciate the work they do in our community, and as you've mentioned, and they give back to our community as well. So great initiative. Thank you for bringing this forward.
Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, fully supportive. I have had family go through there, maybe a few more than I care to, but happy that they're there. And anyway, so I would even ask members of council if they are ever invited to the Dinner on the Hill. That's a very cool event and a really great way to support the work of the Wagner Hills. So yeah, I'll be supportive. Thank you.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, just to clarify, like I said, I'm pretty familiar with these things. We give them back the money for the building permit, then they can utilize it however they want. You know, and you know, outfits like this are always scrounging, unfortunately, always scrounging for money, and it'll just free up almost 50 grand for them to use however they want as non-discretionary funds.
Yeah, so my understanding, Councillor Bailey, when I met with them, is that that's possibly true. That's possibly they would have that discretion. They informed me that they were in the process of raising the balance of the money needed for the treatment facility from the community, and that they were still looking to raise a substantial sum to complete the facility. Yeah, yeah. So with that, I'll call the question on Q6. That carries unanimously. Is there any other business? Councillor Kunst?
Okay, so we had an email regarding the speed bumps close to the hospital, and I feel like we really should address that ASAP. And I was hoping that, I don't know if there's a motion that needs to be made. Happy to make the motion, but I think the letter writer made a very, and I believe that you responded, Mayor Woodward, to the person that was. So do you have any suggestions or any?
Mr. Cooner, maybe a motion to get something going, but without a council meeting for another 7 weeks. So do you have anything to suggest?
Can we just remove them? How about that?
So, I mean, you could make a motion to remove them, but maybe there's an alternative to do something. Mr. Cooner, I think it's council put them in, and council going to take them out. I mean, I think we would be maybe appropriate to
remove
refer
and
them.
replace with cameras. How about that?
Could be referred for a report with options on any of the above, right? We wouldn't see that till September 9th.
My first recommendation would be to direct staff to report to council, but then the next council date is September 9th, so that's when the report to council will be brought forward, and then council can give us direction. The other alternative in the meantime is we can provide a memo to council within a matter of weeks, within a week or two, just to outline the history behind the speed bumps, the rationale of why they're there, and potential other alternatives that could work in that location, but then we would need a resolution in order to implement any of those items. But a memo can be provided to Mayor and Council, and we do not have to wait till the September 9th meeting.
For the information. Yeah.
That is correct.
So let's do that anyway. But if Councillor Kunz wants to advance to remove them, that could certainly be considered.
There was it happened in Chilliwack where, you know, they put in speed bumps. They got feedback from the public and especially from BC Ambulance, and they removed them. And it's I don't know why we need a report. It's pretty obvious the significant danger to and the reason I say this too is I was in an ambulance with my mother-in-law who had a broken hip. So it's not just spinal injuries and all that kind of stuff. There are a lot of seniors now who break their hips, and I was and the ambulance went from South Langley all the way to wherever the roads weren't bumpy. And I remember Evan commented on it and came to council and said, hey, we need to pave 36th Avenue because this is, you know. So anyway, I'm just suggesting that how can we get this done expeditiously?
So what's the motion?
I don't have a motion because I'm looking to.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could make a motion, or we could get that information and consider it on September 9th.
Do you not think that's a little bit too
It's
late?
unfortunate.
Michael, you have sorry.
It's unfortunate given the council calendar. A special meeting could also be called. We can come back to you if you wish.
Sure.
Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I'm torn on this one because I think putting in the traffic calming was done for a reason, but at the same time completely understand the concerns about the type of traffic calming in that area and what kind of path it is. So if there was a motion brought forward, Councillor Kunst, about the removal of them, I would support or maybe amend it to include that if the removal was to happen immediately, a subsequent memo or report came to council from staff about alternate traffic calming solutions for 52nd, whether that's curb bulges or something along the lines that's less intrusive on the emergency response than a speed bump. Because I think that if the traffic calming went in, there was a reason for it, the schools, the churches. So I think that there should be traffic calming, but just maybe not speed bumps.
We can come back to you, Councillor Kunst. I mean, there's a whole lineup now, so we're gonna be here till midnight. Councillor Van Popta, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, those speed bumps went in because we've got an elementary school and a high school on that street, and it's a very wide street, which always means that people are going to speed extra fast. So although I recognize the email that we did receive, I do hope that we just take a measured approach on how we're going to address all the concerns, which is pedestrian safety as well as the needs of BC Ambulance. So I really would value getting a report on how we can address both concerns and not just have one trump over the other.
Councillor Richter?
Oh,
Okay. Councillor Martins?
Yeah. With regards to this particular location, would it be normal in staff practices to consult with BC Ambulance Service, or that's the one we're talking about? So I'm just curious if there is any sort of consultation piece with them with regards to where we put speed humps, bumps. If I may, through the chair to staff.
To your worship, to Council Martins, that would have to take a look at it historically, whether prior to installing these speed humps, that we did consult with the BC Ambulance Services. And then potentially, depending on the direction that is given by council, we would then further consult with the BC Ambulance Services to take into consideration whether these speed bumps are being removed, if in fact they support that position, and if there's any other traffic calming measures that they support in the alternative as well. So that could also be something that staff could be given direction to do as well, to consult first with BC Ambulance Services, weigh the options and report back. But that still, we're still faced with this dilemma of September 9th being the council meeting unless direction is given today.
Okay. Okay, so, all right, so if we give a direction for staff to consult with BC Ambulance Service on, but you're saying we got to wait till September to act on it?
To your worship, to Councillor Martins, if the direction is given is to consult with them, view options, then we would bring a report forward on September 9th for action.
Okay, thank you. Because after we received this email concern, I went over there and I sat there and I observed ambulances crossing over them, and it's definitely slowing down their response if they're needing to get to the hospital as fast as possible, minding safety, because every single time they came to each bump, they came to pretty much a complete stop and very slowly rolled over it, and they had to gradually accelerate and do the same thing at each bump. And so there was a lot of time lost versus just driving that stretch. And so to what Councillor Pratt is saying about curb extensions or some other way, that wouldn't have happened. And it was very evident to me, I could see they had somebody in the back compartment, so clearly whatever was going on there, they had to be extremely careful about it. So I do think this is a critical item here. I appreciate that there are schools there, and maybe there are other ways to slow traffic down, or I heard something about cameras, something like that. But the fact that we're actually watching ambulances having to slow right down to a complete stop when they're trying to get to that hospital, it does really concern me. And that is a regular path for them to use when they're heading north to access the emergency. So I'm not sure if we have a motion on the table yet. I know there's other speakers, but I hope we can come up with some sort of idea before the end of this meeting.
Councillor Kunst?
So would we put forward a motion?
I mean, you could move to remove them. You could move to refer the distribution item to staff for a report. I think they know what they need to report on. You could get the memo. If members of council really want to act on this, 2 members of council can call a special meeting, or I can call a special meeting to advance action. I think it'd be important to make the consultation formal, not an email. I think it'd be good to get some of that confirmed, and then have some options come back, which are to remove and replace with something else, either cameras or other options.
Okay, well, I
And
do
I would
like the
prefer to do that than just
Yeah.
remove them, but I'll leave it up to you, of
Right,
course.
no, I see the importance of making this a safer route, and I believe if there's no speed bumps, but there is some other type of traffic calming that, can be done, then that is gonna really help with this situation, but I think the speed bumps need to be removed. So, Michael's smiling at me over there. I feel like he wants to say something. But so I guess my motion would be to remove them, but to, and I don't have the language, and if maybe staff can help, but if we could remove them and replace them with something that's gonna keep traffic, at least slows it down, but removes the.
That would require funding as well, so I think, I'm not sure what that amount would be. So I'm here, I don't have any vacations booked, that's me, I work all the time. So I'm around till the end of July at a minimum, so I think we can convene a special meeting to make a decision if that's the urgency level that council ascribes to it. Once we have some options in front of us with a funding request, whether or not cameras will even work. Cameras might send a lot of money to the province, but they may not slow any cars down. So I don't know if get that confirmed, but I think there might be some other options Councillor Pratt was hinting at, potentially look at improving some of the pedestrian things in that neighborhood that would also serve to potentially slow some cars down. So I would prefer, rather than just go and remove them, that we would call a special meeting in a week or 10 days once the staff have sensed the urgency of this item and come back with some options.
Okay.
But if that's not the direction,
That's better than getting shut down completely. So I'm open to that.
I don't mind it, but if other members of council want to make the decision today, I would prefer to refer it for a report. But if other members of council are ready to make the decision, that would be entirely up to them as well. So you can make whatever motion you wish to make. I'm not trying to steer you in any direction.
I don't know. Does anybody else have any?
Yeah, I'll come back to Councillor Pratt. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And then you'll have to excuse me, and this might be a motion that gets unanimously defeated. But in light of the fact, so personally, when it comes to the concerns about the ambulance response and first responder response, and Councillor Kunst mentioned Chilliwack, I wasn't aware of something like that. I haven't personally been made aware of a situation in the township where the first responders have lodged a formal sort of complaint with the location of this, like a speed bump. So the motion that I just written up that I would put before council, trying to tick off every box and probably fail at each thing, would be that council directs staff to consult with BC Ambulance Services on the merits of speed bumps as the preferred traffic calming measure, and if through those discussions it is determined that they are not the appropriate method of traffic calming, the speed bumps be removed with a subsequent report to council provided that outlines possible alternative traffic calming measures.
Is there a seconder to that?
Yes.
Seconded by Councillor Kunst. So we'll open that up. I think you can provide that to the clerk.
Yes.
I think the only concern would be the funding required for removal. Can we cover that off through mayor's contingency and then fund that properly in September if that's the direction staff go? That'd be one mechanism to solve the funding issue.
That would be, Your Worship. I'd suggest that we include that language within the motion itself so it's clear.
I'm fine to use mayor's contingency for any funding required for their removal if that's the direction it goes. Hopefully, council will return that to the contingency in September. I don't know. You have to think about that. But that would certainly we can just, and I'll send an email out if it's a significant number and get some consensus.
If I may, Your Worship.
Yep, go ahead.
I've just sent the copy to the clerk.
Great.
If they want to add that language around contingency.
It would be an amendment. I think we can handle it internally. There's no need to do an amendment. I think. Can you read it back, Ms. Little?
I might have sent it to not Miss Little. I think I sent it to Kim though.
Can we get that read back?
Certainly. Send it.
And another item that may be taken into consideration is once the motion's on the screen there, this is specifically in relation to the speed humps at the location we're discussing.
52 Avenue.
Okay, because my interpretation is potentially if you're consulting with BC Ambulance Services in relation to speed hump, is it township-wide or just specific to this?
I would hone in on 52 Avenue in this motion.
So I think that's a very good point, Mr. Gruner. If they suddenly send you a list of all the speed humps to remove, let's get that back to council, okay?
So do you want to add that language around 52 to the motion?
To create more certainty, I would
Okay.
appreciate that.
Okay, so it's already been moved and seconded. So, Ms. Councilor Pratt, are you going to move that amendment to the motion?
While we're making amendments,
Yeah.
do you want the amendment to put in about mayor's contingency
No,
for
I
that
don't think
certainty?
it's necessary because we
Okay.
don't know the amount yet. So,
So the amendment I'd make in relation to 52 Avenue would be that after the words, on the merits of speed bumps as the preferred traffic calming measure, add the words, along 52 Avenue.
yeah. Is there a seconder to that amendment? Seconded by Councilor Kunst. So, is there any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, I'll call that 07. Do we have to speak on it? Okay, so go ahead, Councilor Martins.
Yeah, sorry, yes, I would like to speak on it.
Okay.
It says, traffic calming measure along 52 Avenue, should, and I was gonna say, and I think you wanna add the cross street, because for all we know, anywhere across the whole township of Langley, there might be other speed bumps.
I think we have it. It's on the floor. It's been seconded. So I think that's the amendment. If you wish to amend it further after it's been disposed of, you can do that.
Okay, if you prefer I do it that way, I will, because
You
I.
can't amend an amendment, unfortunately. I'm going to call the question on the first amendment. That carries unanimously. Is there any other discussion on the motion as amended? Councilor Martins?
Yeah, if I can make a further amendment, that we throw in a cross street or an approximate neighborhood, so we're not now assessing, speed humps anywhere on 52nd across the whole township of Langley.
Could you
north to south.
specify what your amendment is, please?
Within Murrayville, or at 219?
Is there a seconder to that second amendment? Seconded by Councilor Kunst. Okay, so we'll call the question on that amendment of Q7. That carries with Councilor Van Popta opposed. Okay, so we're back now to the main motion as amended. Councilor Richter.
Well, I was just going to throw in the 2 9th Street, but I want to see if they're not, the speed bumps be removed.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Is there any other speakers on?
Using council contingency in there? Or mayor's contingency?
No, we don't need to put that in there, Councilor Richter. We covered that off. So is there any other discussion on Q7 as amended? Okay, so I'll call the question on Q7 as amended. That carries unanimously. Is any other business? Okay, who else we got here? Start over. Clear the queue. Any other business? Councilor Martins.
Thank you. We had several communications through the distribution list with regards to night work happening at 208th and 72nd. And I question, if I can through the chair to staff, has there been any staff response to that, maybe helping to relieve some of the current complaints about it? Yeah.
Those staff responses, if there are any, Mr. Cooner, those will be provided in the distribution. Maybe they'll be upcoming.
To your worship, to Councilor Martins, I believe this should be in the distribution list. In the event it is not in the distribution list, I can confirm that there has been a staff reply in relation to night roadworks on 208th and 72nd Avenue that provided a bit of history, notifications, and other information to the resident.
Okay, and included in those responses, are they going to receive a bit more notification in moving forward about moving their vehicles rather than being woken up in the middle of the night, that kind of stuff, for reduction of noise?
Dear Worship, to Councilor Martins, I believe within that email itself, staff have stated that they've reviewed the concerns with the general contractors, and then notification letters were delivered as required, but they would also provide further notifications in the future and advise the general contractor of the same as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilor Ferguson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Myself and my wife and most of my family are heading off to the Olympics in July. That in itself is not significant. What is significant is Zachary Clay, a resident who was born in Langley. He went to Flip City under Rusty Pierce in Langley. He lived in Fernridge and went to a school, preschool in Fernridge, Brookswood area. and now has consequently moved to Chilliwack for a number of years, will be a contestant for men's gymnastics at the Olympics in Ottawa. So I wanted to press that on. It was a person born in Langley that we're going to be supporting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Any other business? Anybody have any special closed items? Ms. Little, I have a legal item and a property item. Councillor Martins?
A consideration item, please.
Okay. Any other items?
And the on-table item.
That is my legal item.
That your legal item?
Yeah.
Informally, without changing things and all that kind of stuff. I got a message. Can you ask the fire department about the speed humps too? Apparently, it sounds like they don't like them either.
Okay. All right, so that's a consideration, a legal and a property. Get a motion to resolve into special closed. Moved by Councillor Rent,
Sure.
seconded by Councillor Bailey. All those in favor, opposed, and that's carried. Get a motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Rent,
Yeah.
seconded by Councillor Van Popta. All those in favor, opposed, and that's carried. Thank you.